Friends, I welcome you to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It is not difficult for you, but it is pleasant for me. And we're starting. Psychiatrists tell us that anger and hatred are destructive feelings that need to be eliminated in order to be emotionally healthy. Maybe so, but how to get rid of righteous anger and hatred? It was a question I needed to answer, and years of therapy didn't help me. Fate helped. My name is Alan Easton. I was a pretty ordinary guy at a big high school that I attended in a medium-sized city in the USA. Although many girls in high school told me that I was very cute, I was shy. I didn't date that much, even though I lost my virginity in junior grade. I was on the football team, and although I had the size, strength, and speed needed to be a starting midfielder, I didn't have the necessary dedication or mean play, so I didn't play that much. My football coach was annoyed that he had never been able to get the best out of me, and he was constantly teasing me. "You're too easy on the uptake, Easton." My grades were always decent, but as with football, I wasn't that committed to my studies, so I wasn't an academic star. However, I did much better on standardized tests than my estimates would have expected. This only led to my teachers wondering why I didn't study better. "You're too sluggish," was my physics teacher's usual refrain. My mother died before I was a teenager, but my older sister Carrie had a strong female influence, and my father was a great father, so I had a good family life. Despite the fact that Carrie was only of average height for a woman, if endurance were voluminous, she would weigh 200 kilograms. Nothing scared her and does not scare her. My father was a partial owner of a car dealership and worked as a service manager, so we were always in decent financial condition. Like most of the kids in my class, I planned to go to college after graduating from high school. However, in my senior year, my plans changed when Janet Hatfield either blinded me or got her claws into me, depending on how you look at her. Janet was the most beautiful girl in my high school class. Although her dress and hairstyle were usually slutty, she had a God-given appearance that would make any man's mouth water. While the rest of her family could rightfully be called trailer trash, she obviously rose above her surroundings and somehow managed to dress and talk decently without giving the impression of a hillbilly or an idiot. In fact, although she was not an academic, she was very smart and also manipulative. She was quirky and purposeful. Although Janet has always been pleasant to me since I first met her in 7th grade, I have never found her approachable, and I have never noticed any romantic interest on her part in me. That changed right after my senior year ended, when she became very attentive. Janet unobtrusively inquired about my sister and father's schedule, and when she found out that my sister had gone to college and my father worked until 6:30 p.m., she invited herself to my house after school one Wednesday. The obvious reason was that I had to help her with her math homework. In fact, the only thing she wanted to study was anatomy. Although I had a kissing session with Janet before that Wednesday, where I was able to feel her, we didn't do anything really serious. However, 15 minutes after we entered my house, we were both naked. I was lying on my back in the living room, and she was riding me like an award-winning horsewoman. That day I found out what was still Janet's most outstanding quality. She could make love. If love had been translated into academic aptitude test scores, she would have been considered a genius. I was happy as a pig in shit for the rest of the school year. My grades have actually improved because my attitude to life has improved. Even my father noticed my optimistic attitude and complimented it. After Janet and I had been making love for about 2 months, she made it clear that she expected me to make a long-term commitment. Never shy about saying what she wanted. She expected us to get married after graduation and have children a few years after that. Janet was obsessed with the idea of eventually becoming a good mother. She wanted to see her dysfunctional family in the rearview mirror and give her children the time, dedication, and love she had always lacked. My plans for college have changed. Despite the contrary advice from my sister Carrie, my father, and a number of my friends, I was determined to start working right after graduating from high school to support us. "You're thinking with your little head, not your big one," was the usual refrain of my family and friends, but since it was absolutely true, it was ignored. A month before the wedding, my best friend asked, "How do you think she became so good in love? And do you think she will be satisfied only with you when you get married? I heard that she earned the $2,000 for your wedding by arranging a whole threesome." Not only did his words not make me think, but they knocked him down after I punched him in the mouth. I fell in love with Janet, and that's why I didn't believe anything bad about her. Nothing could change my mind. Janet's family, living in the trash trailer, obviously couldn't pay for the wedding, but with the money she and I received from part-time work, my father's help, and the $2,000 windfall my friend mentioned, which Janet allegedly received from some mysterious member of a distant family, we had a small but pleasant ceremony and an unassuming reception. I started working at the car dealership, in which my father had a stake, the day we returned from our honeymoon fest, and Janet started working at the bank. For 2 years, everything seemed to be going well. Our love life was certainly good, and maybe even better than we had before the honeymoon. Janet seemed happy, but not satisfied. She began to make more and more remarks about the material things that she would like to have, but which we, with our relatively meager salaries, could not afford. She often asked me if my father, whom she considered rich because of his share in the car dealership, could help us more. I asked Janet about the kids, but she was adamant that until we were in a great financial position, she wasn't going to do it. She was determined to quit her job and devote all her time to her children when we had them. We had been married for almost 2 years when disaster struck me. My father died of a heart attack at work. I was working as a salesman at a used car lot when I heard a noise in the service area. I arrived just in time to see my father take his last breath just before the paramedics arrived. I was devastated. Since my mother died, he has been my rock. Carrie had just graduated from college a month ago and was living at home while she was looking for a job. She took my father's death hard too, but she's a much stronger person than me. Janet supported me in the run-up to the funeral and for several days after it. She didn't shed tears like Carrie and I did, but she was there for me. However, as soon as the dust settled, she started asking more and more about my father's will and when it would be approved. It upset me, and I told her about it, but she still insisted. About 2 weeks after my father's death, Janet, Carrie, my aunt and uncle from out of town and I went to the reading of the will. I think we were all surprised that Dad's share in the car dealership was only 3% and that he had a second mortgage on the house. Apparently, he used the mortgage money to buy his share in the car dealership. Ultimately, this meant that as soon as his share was sold to the majority owner at a price at which we were unable to bargain, and the mortgage on the house was paid off, each of Carrie and I would receive about $10,000. Although Janet didn't say anything, I could tell that steam was coming out of her ears. That was the end of her compassion and support. After that, she became a different woman. I tried my best to revive our relationship, but Janet was cold and indifferent. Love became infrequent, and when we had it, she immediately took a shower after that, which she had never done before. 3 months after the reading of the will, I returned home to our rented apartment and did not find Janet. But I found a note above a stack of papers. "Hello, Alan. I want to have children, but you can't support them the way I want. I'm moving to greener pastures. I've withdrawn more than half of the money from our pathetic bank account, since I'm leaving you all the furniture. Don't try to contact me. Call my lawyer if you need anything." His name is listed in the divorce papers under this note. Good luck, Janet. Yes, that was what was under the note. A stack of papers asking for a divorce based on irreconcilable differences. I think this meant that I wasn't a potential path to happiness, as she thought, and therefore expendable. I was just the first step out of her garbage trailer life. I tried to contact her, but her lawyer insisted that she was not interested in talking to me. I was heartbroken because I really loved this fool. But how could I not see that she never loved me? Fortunately, Carrie still lived in the city and had a good job. Since I could no longer afford an apartment without Janet's income, I sold the furniture and moved in with her for a short time. Only Carrie kept me from being completely discouraged. As for the next 6 weeks, I just drifted with the flow of life. Then I found out from some of my friends that Janet now lives with a wealthy real estate developer and wears maternity clothes. Now I was really furious. I called her lawyer again and demanded to see Janet. "Actually, Mr. Easton, I was going to call you," Janet's lawyer told me. "Janet is pregnant and will amend her divorce petition to claim child support." I was stunned again. I just signed the papers for an uncontested divorce with the section of our finances that Janet has already arranged, without alimony in any case. That was the moment when I became a different person. No more Mr. Nice Guy, I told myself, lashing out at her lawyer. Tell this fucking fool that if she asks for child support, I will immediately demand a paternity test and withdraw my consent to the divorce. I have heard that there are several methods for determining paternity in the womb. If it turns out that this is my child, then I will pay for the test. If not, then she will pay for the test, and I will file for divorce on the grounds of adultery and demand alimony and the redistribution of our few possessions. I got this asshole, I shouted, slamming the phone down. I never received any official papers asking for child support because I knew that the fetus was not mine. But now any love I felt for Janet has been replaced by anger and hatred. When the divorce became final, 2 months later, Carrie came home from work and found me drunk and chatting incessantly. Although I was in a daze, I had never seen her so furious. She called me all the names in the book and, in fact, advised me to be a man and be glad that the fool, as she always called Janet now, disappeared from my life. Then Carrie pushed me into the bedroom and slammed the door, shouting, "Don't come out until you sober up." I fell asleep drowning in self-pity. When I woke up, I smelled eggs and bacon cooking. Carrie was in the kitchen. I called both of our places of work and told them that we would be out until noon, Carrie said, motioning for me to sit down and then placing a plate of fragrant food in front of me. "Why?" I asked. "Because we're going to talk, and it's probably going to take me a while to get into your stupid fucking head what you need to do. That's why." As I said, Carrie was tough. Within 2 hours, Carrie convinced me that I needed to get at least 1,000 kilometers away, that I should at least get an associate degree by going to a local college in the evenings, and that I should leave this fool behind. And if I can't, I need to seek professional help. A month later, I was on my way. I moved to an area of the country where construction was booming, got a job as a laborer, rented an inexpensive apartment, and enrolled in a local community college, starting evening classes 2 months later. When my body finally adjusted to physical labor, I found that I really enjoyed being in better shape, even than when I was playing football. I also found out that my school teachers were right to be disappointed in my academic performance, because when I proved myself the same as at the local college, I realized that I could become a star. Despite the fact that I attended night school, I graduated with an associate degree in civil engineering and a bachelor's degree in business in just 2 school years and 2 summer months. I haven't actually dated anyone. I made love about once a week. They were mostly cheaters that I picked up in a bar for one night. From time to time, if I was really horny and couldn't pick up a fool, I would use a cheater. No one could compare to Janet, so they never really made me think about her. In fact, I was proud that I had put her out of my mind. 30 months after moving, I got a job as a manager at the same construction company where I worked as a laborer. I got to know the foreman very well, and then, through him, the owner. They both thought I had talent. My salary was now 4 times higher than what I received when I moved, and during this time I saved a decent amount, since the tuition at the local college was minimal. I decided to treat myself on the weekend after I got a new job by hiring a call girl instead of a prostitute. I found the agency through my friend, who vouched for me in front of them, and chose Desiree, obviously just her stage name, from the photos on the escort agency's webpage. The price was high, $900 for 3 hours, but I was convinced that I really deserved it. When Desiree showed up at my apartment on Saturday at 8 p.m., in real life she was twice as beautiful as in the photos. When Desiree entered the door, she closed it behind her. We looked at each other carefully, saying only, "Hi, I'm Desiree," and "Hi, I'm Alan." Surprisingly, it didn't cause the slightest awkwardness. She spoke first, with a big smile on her face. "My last 2 dates were old and fat. After them, I deserve a handsome man like you. I hope you've been saving money, because I'm going to use you half to death, stud." After Janet, Desiree was the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in person. She had a devilish look, a slender body and muscular thighs sticking out from under a miniskirt. Desiree was obviously aroused by her muscles. My work as a handyman and then going to the gym, once I started doing office work instead of most of the physical labor, increased the volume of my arms and chest. Desiree started stroking my hands, took off my shirt, and then kissed me passionately. "Damn, I didn't think that call girls kiss," I said to myself, but I wasn't going to refuse. "I need to use it hard," I whined. As soon as we both recovered a little, I said, "Damn it, Desiree, you're just amazing. I am proud that I make great love if I have a great partner, she replied, laughing. The last moment really unsettled her. She was lying on the bed and muttering something. I snuggled up to her, something I hadn't done in a long time, and she fell asleep. I soon followed her. She started to move, which also woke me up. I looked at my watch. Damn it, Desiree, I said. It's 2 a.m. You've been here for 6 hours, but I only paid for 3. She moaned. If you promise not to tell the agency, I'll stay the night. There's no way in the world I'm going home at this hour. It was probably the easiest decision I've ever made in my life. It's a deal, I blurted out. When I woke up the next morning, I couldn't believe I was still hugging Desiree. I looked at her sleeping and got aroused again. I pulled back the sheet to look at her impressive pelvis, and then I saw it. I gently woke her up. She kissed me and said, I hope you didn't waste your money. About 10 times more, was my reply. However, there is a problem. Oh yeah? What? She replied. Our last love was unprotected, I said. Damn it, she exclaimed. This is only my 5th job, and I've already broken about 12 rules. I'll be fired if they find out about this, she wailed. Don't get mad, but you don't have any diseases, do you? I asked timidly. I'm not, and you? She answered just as timidly. Listen, let's both meet at the clinic on Monday and take the test. I'll pay for it. It's a good idea, she replied. I smiled so wide it hurt. I was glad when Desiree showed up at the clinic on Monday. I wasn't sure if she would do it. She gave me a quick kiss on the lips when she arrived, and after we passed the tests. The results of the HIV and HPV tests came immediately. We were clean. Getting other results would take 5 or 6 days. She gave me an email address where I could contact her and report the results. Fortunately, we both had no illnesses. Since I haven't had a blood test in years, I also paid for it for both of us. You must be one of the 2 healthiest people we've ever tested, the head of the clinic told me before emailing the results. I emailed Desiree the results. She immediately replied by email that she was free on Thursday evening and asked what time she should come to my house. Desiree and I made love all Thursday night and Friday morning. My all-time record is 4 moments in just 10 hours, and countless for her. When Desiree and I were getting dressed after breakfast on Friday morning, she kissed me goodbye. If we had met under different circumstances, we could have had a real relationship, she smiled. I really believe you're right. However, 2 nights with you were worth 10 years of pleasure with someone else. Thank you 1,000 times, I replied thoughtfully. She really liked it. She took a nude photo of herself out of her purse and handed it to me. In memory of me. I'm sorry, but if you need me again, you'll have to contact the agency. I have an exclusive contract with them, and love is my job. I understand, I said, kissing her one last time before we both walked out the door. While the love with Desiree was phenomenal and only marginally inferior to the love with Janet, my 2 happy nights with her created an unexpected problem. I started thinking about Janet. I thought about how wonderful my love life was back then and how I was treated more abominably than anyone else I had ever heard of. Anger and hatred filled me again. When my friends told me that I was acting like an asshole, I realized what the problem was. My sister Carrie told me that I needed to see a psychiatrist. Going to a psychoanalyst helped. At least I was able to achieve a balance when I wasn't being a jerk to my friends and colleagues. After I visited the psychoanalyst 3 times in the first month, and then about once a month for a year, he conducted an analysis. You have about as much anger and hatred in you as any sane patient I've ever had, Alan. I'm afraid that the usual therapeutic procedures will not allow you to release them. Anger and hatred are bad for your health, although you haven't had any side effects so far. Probably because you stay in great shape. Dr. Bennett told me, looking over the top of his glasses. So there's no hope that I'll ever get rid of it? I asked with obvious disappointment in my voice. Some catastrophic event must happen to put an end to this. Thanks to a happy accident, not counseling, you will get rid of how you feel about Janet. I hope it will happen soon. Does that mean it's over between us? I asked, really puzzled. It would be a waste of your money to keep visiting me every month. You are still my patient, but I recommend that you visit me every 6 to 9 months and call me if there is anything urgent. I want to see you heal completely because it's unlikely you'll have a full-fledged relationship if you don't. but I can't do anything with conventional therapy or medication. Thank you for your honesty, Dr. Bennett, I said, standing up and holding out my hand. I'll see you in 6 to 9 months if I don't have a crisis, I grinned. Good luck, he said, smiling and shaking my hand. It has been 9 years since I left my hometown. When I had the opportunity to return, I was still a young man, at the age of 29, but I had advanced in my company so much that I was considered as a candidate to create a new branch of the company in my hometown. The only good thing about it would be to be able to see Carrie. I still had memories that were too painful, and although my anger and hatred did not dissipate, I controlled them. My boss insisted that I at least look for a branch location in my hometown, even if I eventually refused to open a branch there. Since this would allow me to see Carrie in her homeland, her wedding 6 years earlier was a field wedding, and she and her husband Jeff came to visit me or met at some vacation spot about every 6 months, and since I did not necessarily need to return, I agreed. When I was talking to Carrie, she insisted on giving me the latest news about Janet so that I wouldn't be surprised. When the real estate market crashed, Janet dumped the guy from the real estate agency just like she dumped me. So much so that she was pregnant with her second daughter when she left him for a hedge fund manager. She was Janet Jenkins now. Surprisingly, she is still married to her third husband, hedge fund manager Kevin Jenkins, and was a housewife with daughters aged 6 and 8. The eldest daughter was adopted by Kevin Jenkins, and the second was his biological daughter. In fact, I was glad that Carrie told me about it for 2 reasons. I wasn't the only jerk Janet dumped, and I hated the guy from the real estate agency for taking her away from me. I rented a car at the airport. It was very strange, because over the past 9 years, many physical improvements have been made here. I went to inspect some properties. I was planning to meet Carrie and her husband Jeff at their house to stay the night until I found something suitable. I had driven no more than 30 kilometers, still 7 kilometers from the first object I had to look at, when I had a flat tire. I called the rental company, and it would have taken them an hour to get someone to see me, so I changed the tire myself. I forgot to pack the wrench along with the rest of the gear, so I threw it on the floor in front of the front passenger seat and continued on my way. I was stopped at a traffic light when the children were leaving a private school. I saw 3 cute little girls crossing the street in their school uniforms and about to get into a limo. The driver was holding the back door for them when all hell broke loose. A black SUV pulled up and 3 guys jumped out of it. They hit the driver on the head and grabbed the screaming girls. Their backpacks flew apart. The bandits ended up in an SUV with 3 girls in the back seat before the light turned green. I didn't hesitate. I ran a red light, bypassing 1 car at an intersection and rammed an SUV. My airbag went off, as did the SUV driver, but he didn't fasten his seatbelt and was stunned, groaning in the front seat as the airbag deflated. I grabbed a wrench, unbuckled my seatbelt, jumped out of the car, and ran to the now stopped SUV. The guy with the gun got out from the passenger side in the back seat, but he was unstable, and by the time he fired, I was next to him. I hit him on the head with a wrench, causing him to collapse to the ground. The third thug got out of the back seat on the driver's side and put a knife to the throat of one of the petrified little girls and told me to throw the key. I looked at him calmly and then spoke loudly and clearly. If you let the girl go, I'll let you go. However, you will not move from this place with her. If you hurt her, I'll crush your testicles before I kill you. You have 10 seconds to make a decision, after which I will come for you. With these words, I raised my left hand, looked at my watch, and began to count 1, 2. When I got to 6, he let go of the crying girl and started running. I threw a wrench at him and felt like Daniel Boone when I saw it hit him in the back of the head and knocked him to the ground. I went up to him, put my knee on his back, and called the stunned people from the school opposite to call 911. Obviously, someone had already called, because the cops were there exactly 2 minutes later. When the police arrived there, 2 male teachers from the school were holding the driver of the SUV, who was still moaning, lying on his stomach, and 5 or 6 parents of other children or other teachers from the school were comforting 3 terrified little girls. The cops quickly arrested all 3 thugs. Everyone was loaded into ambulances while I was being treated for a gunshot wound to my left arm, which I didn't know about until one of the teachers pointed out the blood to me. The gunman was unconscious and probably dying. The other 2 were injured and bleeding, but not with life-threatening injuries. The limo driver was also treated at the scene. After the ambulances had just left and I was giving a statement to a police lieutenant, while the paramedic was finishing treating my wound, I heard the hysterical crying of a woman who ran up to the two little girls who had been abducted as they screamed, "Mom, Mom." My eyes bulged when I got a good look at her. Damn, Janet. Janet saw me. After the initial shock, she ran up to me shouting, "You're a fucking fool, Alan. I know you have something to do with this. I know that you kidnapped my girls to get back at me. You piece of shit." Before I or the cops could react, she jumped on me. She hit me twice on the head with her purse before I got out of the way and a policeman grabbed her. "This guy saved your children's lives, lady," the policeman shouted, restraining her. She didn't listen and kept swearing at me. In the distance, I saw the policeman finally calm her down, and the little girls ran to her as I got into the lieutenant's car to finish testifying at the police station. Having watched enough police TV shows when I got to the station, I knew enough to insist that my testimony be recorded on video. The main question the cops had was how I got the wrench so quickly. Since my rented car was already in their parking lot, it was easy for them to check my story. After my statement, they asked me to stay for a while longer, which I agreed to while I could call my sister. Carrie was stunned and agreed to pick me up. I told the cops, "My sister will be here in half an hour, so I'm leaving." "We need you to stay a little longer," the lieutenant said. "I won't do it until you arrest me. And if you do, you'll be featured in my wrongful arrest lawsuit." I snapped at him. He noticed the change in my behavior from friendly to hostile and did not insist. "However, I need one more thing," I told him. "I want to get an arrest warrant for the crazy fool who hit me." "She was just a distraught mother," the lieutenant replied. "She attacked me, and I'm pressing charges. Either you give me a form to fill out, or I'll go to the press tomorrow morning and ask them to ask the commissioner why you didn't take action against the one who attacked me." By the time I filled out the form, Carrie was already waiting for me. I took my suitcase from the cops, they obviously searched it, and left after Carrie hugged me tightly. Of course, the story of the thwarted kidnapping at a private school was the top story on the television news that evening and the headline in the newspaper the next day. Fortunately, the press couldn't find me because Carrie and I had different last names. However, it seemed that one reporter or another was talking to everyone else who had anything to do with the situation. The next day, I went to a lawyer to sue Janet for defamation and assault, and see if he could make sure the police arrested her for assault. He was very happy to help his new, well-known client. I went about my business during the day. Everyone was talking about saving me, but no one recognized me, and I kept my mouth shut. That evening, everything changed. One television station acted quickly and obtained copies of surveillance footage from commercial and street cameras, although apparently the school did not provide them with a copy of its recording, which was the clearest. They blew up a photo of me being treated for an injury and said many flattering words about my actions and bravery. It was difficult to run a normal business that day, as I was recognized, and people were dying to talk about the incident. The reporter got wind of my whereabouts, and soon they surrounded me too. I gave short, terse interviews, downplaying my role. Somehow Janet found my sister's number. I didn't think she knew my sister's last name by marriage. She called her home, looking for me, to apologize for going off the rails, and to thank me for saving her children, and asked for a meeting. At least, Carrie said that was what Janet's voicemail message was. I've never listened to it, and I told Carrie to delete it. I told Carrie that if Janet called and she answered, tell her to fuck off. The next day, before I left back to my office, I met with my new lawyer again. He had all the documents ready for my lawsuit against Janet for defamation and assault. I read them, signed them, and paid my lawyer in advance. My lawyer also told me that he had spoken with the prosecutor's office. He reminded them of how high-profile the case was and asked about Janet's arrest and prosecution. He was told that they were looking into it and would contact him. When I flew home, I was very pleased with myself. I'm ashamed to admit that it had more to do with the possibility of suing Janet and the fact that she now owes me a lot of emotional debt than even saving 3 little girls. Now my anger and hatred had a healthy outlet. When I returned to my office and told my boss about the 2 great places I had found, he was pleased. Of course, the news about my escapades was known in my city, and everyone around me congratulated me. On my first day back, my boss, the owner of the company, and his wife invited me to have lunch at the nicest restaurant in town, where I found out again that I was a local celebrity. I enjoyed my 15 minutes of fame. When I returned to my office after lunch, I got a call. "Mr. Easton, this is Bradley Simmons," said a pleasant voice on the other end of the line. Bradley Simmons is a billionaire entrepreneur, considered one of the 25 richest people in America. "Yes, and I'm sure you're calling me from the White House when the Pope and the Dalai Lama are next to you," I chuckled. "No. Who is it really?" "I'm sorry to call you out of the blue, Mr. Easton, but one of the little girls you saved earlier this week is my granddaughter Elsie, and I'm calling to thank you and tell you the good news." "If you're joking, it's a cruel joke," I said. "I assure you that this is not a joke, and after we talk, I will give you a way to confirm it." As he spoke, I became convinced that it was indeed Bradley Simmons. I asked him to call me Alan, and he asked me to call him Brad. He was sincerely grateful to me, and at one point said that his 8-year-old granddaughter Elsie was the apple of his eye and that most likely there would have been a ransom for her, but most likely she would have been killed regardless of whether he paid or not, since the kidnappers had a police file abounding violent crimes. He ended our phone conversation with very good news. "Alan, I owe you a lot, and I'm paying my debts. If you ever need my help, whether it's a job, a recommendation, a trip to Europe, whatever you want to call it, just call me and it's yours. My secretary will email you my personal mobile phone number. I'm just asking that you don't give it to anyone else." "Wow, that's really kind of you, Brad, and I can assure you that I will guard this with my life," I replied. "And one more thing. Don't worry about your rental car, which you used to save my granddaughter's life. It's been taken care of. I was sure that I would have to pay for the rental car that I had assembled, or that my insurance rates would rise, even if I only had to pay the deductible." I dialed the number of the car rental company that Brad had given me and was shocked to find out that this was the president's office. When I told the secretary my name, I was immediately connected to her. "Hello, Mr. Easton. This is Catherine Timms, president of XYZ. I want to tell you personally that we are very proud of what you have done, and for the first time, as far as I can remember, we are glad that one of our cars was wrecked. I want to assure you that not only will you not be charged for anything related to the damage to the car, but also that we have refunded the rental fee to your credit card." I was stunned and, after muttering a few thanks, had to satisfy my curiosity. "I didn't think Mr. Bradley Simmons had anything to do with it," I said. Timms laughed. "Actually, Brad's holding company owns XYZ, and it was he who drew my attention to your situation, although, of course, I saw a video about your heroism on TV. However, even if you hadn't saved Brad's granddaughter, I assure you, we would have done exactly the same." "Thank you," I replied. "As I said, we are proud that you were able to use one of our cars to facilitate your heroism. Also, our marketing department told anyone who would listen that it was one of our cars," she said, laughing even louder. "We will probably get 100 times the cost of the car for free advertising. I've had a very good week." Carrie told me that Janet called her all the time and sent her emails, which Carrie did not open, but simply returned. Finally, Carrie answered the phone instead of leaving a message. As soon as she confirmed that the caller ID was accurate, she screamed into the phone, "Stop messing with me, you fucking fool. Alan will never, ever, ever contact you except through his lawyers. If you call again, I'll ask his lawyers to file a harassment suit." Obviously, Janet didn't try to contact her after that. She repeatedly asked my lawyer to meet with me. He told her that everything would be done as part of the official proceedings. While I was enjoying putting pressure on Janet, it was getting more expensive. I knew that I had to go to the deposition, where I filed a lawsuit, and my lawyer told me that Janet had the right to be present at the deposition, although he could have made arrangements so that I would never have to talk to her. While I was thinking about what date it would be convenient to come to testify, my phone rang. "This is Mr. Simmons," my secretary exclaimed excitedly. "Wow," I thought to myself, gathering my thoughts. "Hi, Brad, how are you doing?" I asked. "Great, Alan. What about you?" "Well, apart from my lawsuit with my ex-wife, everything is fine. Even that's great, because I'm pushing her, but I don't like how much it costs. I have to go to the deposition, and I'm trying to set a time," I blurted out. "Really?" Brad said. I was suddenly embarrassed. "I'm sorry, Brad. I didn't want to put pressure on you. It's just that your call came just as I was looking through my schedule," I continued. "Well, Alan, then we have a little luck. I called to tell you that the mayor wants to arrange a ceremony to award you the City Hero of the Year. You could schedule it during your testimony and get a refund for the ride, Brad said enthusiastically. I'm not a fan of advertising, Brad. I've turned down dozens of interview requests, including from 60 Minutes. But anyway, I can't believe the city will pay my travel expenses. Haha, that's a good idea, Brad laughed. I have to be honest. I'll pay your travel expenses, but because the ceremony is very important to my granddaughter. Elsie insists that she wants to give a public speech thanking you, and I think it's good for both her development and healing her injury, so I'm begging you to come. God, Brad, I really don't want to say no to you, but I'm afraid of it. I really don't like to draw attention to myself. It would be very inconvenient for me. Brad interrupted me. I understand, Alan, but here's the thing. If you come, I will not only pay your travel expenses, but I will also pay the lawyer's fees for your lawsuit against your ex-wife, and I will owe you double. I can assure you that what I owe you doubly is good for you. I thought about it for a while, probably longer than I thought since Brad said, "Are you here, Alan?" I'm sorry, Brad. I was just thinking. Actually, you made it impossible to refuse, but you really don't need to pay for my legal services. I'll come to the ceremony. Fine, but I want to pay your legal fees. I resent the way she treated you. I didn't know you filed a lawsuit, but now that I know, I want to help. My secretary will give you instructions to pass on to your lawyer and tell you the expected dates of the ceremony. I'm looking forward to meeting you, Alan, Brad said. Thanks, Brad, I said happily. Life was getting better. My lawyer was the happiest person I've ever talked to when he called me and informed me that Brad Simmons was paying the bill. His personal lawyer told me to give my best and spare no expense within my ethical requirements. I am sure that my lawyer saw that his bills had simply doubled and had no doubt that he would receive them. The day before the ceremony, my testimony was taken at my lawyer's office. As expected, Janet Jenkins was present. She tried to talk to me many times, and each time I acted very grown up. I covered my ears with my hands, while my lawyer asked her not to talk to me. In the end, my lawyer told the opposing lawyer, "If your client tries to talk to mine again, I will stop testifying, and you can explain to the judge why this should continue under the circumstances." Janet left the room in tears. I smiled broadly. The ceremony was awkward, but at the same time it was exciting to meet Brad in person. His granddaughter Elsie's thank you speech was the most charming thing I've ever seen in my life, and it brought tears to my eyes. Everything was perfect, right to the end. After the ceremony, I chatted with various people, holding my award in my hands. When I had just finished talking to the mayor and turned to leave, Janet's second husband, and Janet's current husband Kevin Jenkins were standing behind me. I didn't even know they were there. I was so shocked that Janet blurted out, "Alan, I really want to thank you for saving my girls," and I cut her off. When I was face to face with her, I lowered my voice and said, "Fuck you, Janet. If I had known they were your children, I would never have saved them," then turned to leave. I was glad of that, because it was the cruelest comment I could possibly have made to her. That is, I felt great until I saw her daughters standing on the sidelines with such shocked and sad faces that it was clear that they had heard my comment. Then I felt like shit. The fact that two innocent little girls between the ages of 6 and 9 heard my remark, which was not true, but intended to cause Janet as much pain as possible, really bothered me. I was still thinking about it and how to fix it 4 days later when my lawyer called. Two things. Good news about the court's decision and a settlement offer from the opposing lawyer, he said. Tell me, I replied. The judge ruled that we can present evidence of how Janet left you with another man's child in the womb in our presentation on damages. This is a big advantage, and it spoils them, but it's good. Fine, I replied. As for the settlement proposal, it was probably influenced by both the court's decision on the evidence and your persistent unwillingness to even talk to Janet or her second and third husbands. They offered to pay $500,000 to close the case, without admitting responsibility, and if you drop the criminal assault complaint that is still pending against Janet. You have to agree. You will never get that much in court, even with penalties, my lawyer said. My wheels are spinning. I have a counteroffer, I said. I agree with the amount and with the refusal to prosecute, but Janet must admit that her comments were defamatory and untrue. I don't care about admitting to the assault. However, the most important thing is that I get a 15-minute face-to-face meeting with her two daughters at the courthouse. Neither she nor her second or third husbands can attend. Just their lawyer, you, me, and two girls. The adults on their part should agree not to make any attempts to talk to me. They also have to agree to let me talk to the girls alone for 10 minutes every year until they turn 18. If they disagree with all these provisions, or if they make any comments questioning my motivation to date girls, we will sue. I do not know what you were thinking, but okay. You're the boss. He chuckled. My lawyer called me back 2 hours later. They agreed to this and proposed a date for the meeting. As soon as I confirmed the date of the meeting, I called Brad on his cell phone. Brad, this is Alan Easton. You said I could call you on your cell phone. I hope I didn't bother you. Alan, I owe you double. So even if you were bothering me, which you aren't, I'd like to talk to you. By the way, my granddaughter had the most rewarding experience of her life at the ceremony, and she was very impressed by the tears in your eyes, sissy. Thanks, Brad. She's just lovely. I laughed. I explained to Brad what I wanted to do at the meeting with Janet's girls. To do this, Brad had to transfer me $400,000, which I will refund as soon as I receive the payment from Janet. Wow, you're a better person than I thought, and I already thought highly of you, Brad replied sincerely. Of course I will do it. My assistant will transfer the money to your trusted lawyer. Let him get the paperwork done. Thanks, Brad. We're even, I said. It doesn't even count as one of the two I owe you, and you better return them both, or I'll have to do something that will embarrass you, he chuckled. Janet and Kevin Jenkins watched anxiously as her lawyer escorted her two daughters, Elizabeth and Jamie Jenkins, ages 9 and 7, to an empty jury room in the courthouse. I smiled warmly when the girls came in, shook their hands, performed a magic trick that I had been practicing for a week to calm them down, and then told them why I wanted to meet them. I wanted to tell you too, right to your face, that I'm so proud that I was able to help you with these kidnappers. I know that you heard me say something untrue to your mother, and I wanted to fix it, I said, sitting down and holding each of them by my hand. Isn't that what you meant when you said you wouldn't have saved us if you knew who our mom was? Elizabeth asked with a slight smile. No, no, no. That's not what I meant. You are two precious, wonderful children, and whoever your parents are, I would be proud to help you at any time. However, I really don't like your mom for what she did to me in the past, and I said what I said just to hurt her for the way she hurt me in the past. But I would give my life to save you too. Why don't you like our mom? Elizabeth asked, pushing back her beautiful light red hair that covered one of her sparkling blue eyes. That's not what I need to bother you about. You just need to know that this has nothing to do with any of you, I replied as warmly as possible. After that, the conversation flowed easily. Time was flying by and 15 minutes were up, so I asked Janet's lawyer to give me 5 more minutes. He agreed. Girls, to show you how happy I am that I had the honor to help you, I am giving each of you a gift. Mr. Ames, my lawyer here, has enough money in trust for the two of you to pay for your college tuition, no matter what happens to your parents. If you ever need money for anything related to college, you just call him and he'll take care of it for you. Here are 2 of his postcards. Mr. Ames will call each of you on this day every year until you graduate from college to see if you need any money and to find out how you are doing. My friend Elsie told me that college costs a lot of money, Elizabeth said, her eyes wide. Yes, it is. That's why I'm giving Mr. Ames the money to make sure you two can get in, no matter what else happens. Both girls hugged me and kissed me on the cheek. Tears glistened in Elizabeth's eyes. And one more thing. Here are the right rings for us. I've already given one to your friend Elsie. This should show that we have a bond that will last forever, because I helped you, and you helped me, giving me more joy than I could ever have imagined, having the honor to help you, I said. With these words, I put a multicolored plastic ring on the ring finger of each of their right hands, although it was too big for them, and put another, identical ring on the little finger of my right hand. They smiled, hugged, and kissed me again and left the room. Janet's lawyer was stunned. He almost fell over when he looked at his copy of the trust agreements, under which each of the girls was allocated $200,000, which would undoubtedly double in 10 years, for their education, and the remaining amount would be transferred to them upon graduation from college. I was a little worried, so my lawyer and I sat in the jury room for another 5 minutes or so before getting up to leave. When we left, It was obvious that Janet's lawyer had explained to her and her husband what had happened, and she was sobbing, on the verge of fainting. For any normal person, this would mean that she was shocked by my generosity and would know that, despite the fact that I hated her, I loved her children very much. Whether it was really her emotions, I'll never know, because I just left with a little wave to Elizabeth and Jamie. Right after my 42nd birthday, I returned to my hometown. In the 12 years since I settled my lawsuit with Janet, I have met with my psychoanalyst once a year, and by now he has stated that my hatred and anger towards Janet is completely under control. However, I still didn't have a serious relationship. This worried my psychiatrist, but she had no other solution than the possibility of some random act that would help me overcome the last obstacle. I've been working for Brad Simmons on special projects for the last 11 years, and I was very close to becoming a rich man myself. Brad now insisted that I open a business for him in my hometown. Since I no longer had the fears about meeting Janet that I had 12 years ago, I was actually looking forward to it, as I could see Carrie, Jeff, and my dear 11 and 9-year-old niece and nephew much more often. As part of the procedure for creating a new business, I hired a PR firm. The person they assigned to me was a 21-year-old woman named Betsy Destino. At first, I was confused that they had appointed someone so young and fresh out of college to the post, although the president of the advertising firm assured me that she was the best person for the job and that he would replace her if I was unhappy. When I met Betsy, I was amazed. At first, she seemed familiar to me, but I soon realized that I had probably never seen anyone like her before. She must have been the most beautiful living woman I've ever seen in my life, including Janet and Desiree. She had long, flowing reddish-blonde hair, sparkling azure eyes, an upturned nose, full lips, a figure that looked like it came off the cover of Sports Illustrated swimsuit magazine, and the epitome of cheerful and friendly behavior. Betsy was also hardworking, and she had great ideas. I spent more time with her than I should have because I was just fascinated by her, but as a result, the company got off to a great start. Almost every day I asked myself, why couldn't I have met someone like her when I was 21? Her habit of touching my hand when she laughed almost made me put cream on my pants. When the 3-month contract with the advertising firm expired, it was a sad day for me. I would have liked to keep her at work, but her company had other plans for her, and I really couldn't justify it if Brad had ever asked me about it. When Betsy and I said goodbye in my office, she shocked me to the core. "Now that I don't work for you anymore, you could invite me to dinner and to the theater," she said, looking into my eyes like a cobra. Well, I muttered. I didn't really have a chance to fully respond when she hugged me tightly and whispered in my ear, "Call me, or I'll haunt you." And then, parting, she shoved a piece of paper with her mobile phone number into my hand. I watched her ass sway as she left, and then immediately tried to suppress my boner when my secretary started coming into my office. That evening, I invited myself to Carrie's for dinner. The children were happy to see me and the gifts I brought them. "Stop spoiling them," Carrie chided as they ran around the house holding their latest treasure from Uncle Al. After dinner, when Jeff was putting the kids to bed, Carrie asked, "What's the matter? I know that look. You want to talk?" "Yes, I do," was all I said when we entered the living room hand in hand. Carrie was the only person on earth I trusted that she was completely honest with me. Our love for each other was so deep that nothing could break it, allowing us to be honest. I told her about Betsy for the first time, and even showed her a picture. "I think I saw this woman, but I can't remember where," she said with a mocking expression on her face. "Obviously, she's a top 10 in terms of looks. And her character matches her appearance," I interjected. Then I told her what Betsy had told me, and showed her a piece of paper with her phone number and a little heart on it. "Carrie, be honest. Is it possible that this woman finds me attractive? I'm more than 20 years older than her, and she could probably get just about any guy she wanted." Carrie looked at me intently. Then she replied seriously, "Alan, you look good, in great shape and well off. It's possible. However, the odds are still less than 50 to 50, but it's worth a try. In fact, I would say that if you don't try, then you're a fool. Just don't move your chin and keep your expectations realistic every day." I smiled, stood up, lifted Carrie to her feet and hugged and kissed her tightly. "Carrie, you are the best. Thanks for the treat." I need to make a phone call. I walked out of her front door to Carrie's bursts of laughter as she closed the door behind me. When I went out with Betsy that Saturday night, I was nervous as hell. In 5 minutes, she calmed me down with her smile, shining eyes, casual conversation, and touching. Lots of touches. We had a great dinner. The conversation proceeded as if we were old friends. She held my hand for most of the performance. As we were driving home, she put her hand on my hip and asked, "Would we like to have a drink at your apartment for the night?" Her gaze would melt steel. When we entered my apartment, she threw her shawl on a chair in the living room and found herself almost nose to nose with me, holding my tie. "If you don't reject me, we will have unprotected love tonight, and at least 3 more times, then we will continue." My knees felt like cotton wool and my face was sweating. "If you are interested in this, then it should be with full understanding. I'm not going to be exclusive with you. At some point, I will find someone my own age whom I want to marry and start a family. No matter what happens, once I get engaged, we will never have love again. But I hope that we will remain friends." "Agreed? What is it?" she asked rhetorically. "Alan, I expected that my 4 trial moments with you would last several weeks, not one night and morning. So tell me, did you enjoy making love to me enough to continue?" I laughed. "I'm sorry, Betsy, but that was probably the stupidest question I've ever been asked in my life." "Let me discuss my train of thought with you," I said, then pinched her lightly. "Why was that?" She giggled. "I wanted to make sure you were real and not a ghost." I giggled, then continued. "Let's see. I just had the best love of my life with the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. Do I want to continue using it?" A really difficult question to answer," I said, pretending to think seriously and stroking my chin. Betsy stood up, laughing. "I'm getting dressed. If you don't call me tomorrow, I'll know that your answer is no." She laughed even louder. The next 14 months were the best of my life. Although Betsy periodically reminded me that we were not the only ones of our kind and that if she ever got engaged, our love relationship would end, she was the most loving, aggressive, sparkling woman in history. She was a real goddess. Betsy usually had dates on Fridays and Saturdays, and sometimes she went out of town for the weekend. We hardly ever talked about her other lovers when we were making passionate love, usually every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday evening. Sometimes we studied in her apartment, and sometimes in my apartment. Betsy and I didn't just make love. We went to dinners, plays, charity events, and even for one 3-day weekend to the most expensive resort in the East. I felt so confident and so satisfied with life that I started dating too. I found several women, ranging in age from 10 years younger than me to 5 years older, whom I enjoyed being with and making love to. I have never tried to compare them with Betsy, as it would be extremely unfair to them. After one even more memorable love than usual, on Thursday evening, Betsy sat me down in bed and said, "We need to talk." "Okay," I said, holding her hands in mine and noticing for the first time the ring on her right little finger. It was too dark to see what it looked like. "You heard me mention Eric, and you met him once, right?" "What is it?" she asked. One Saturday night at a restaurant, I bumped into Betsy and a cute blonde guy she introduced as Eric when I was on a date, and Betsy sometimes talked about him. "Of course," I replied, knowing where this would lead. "Well, he asked me to marry him. I'm in love with him, and I'm going to say yes to him on Monday," she said, looking into my eyes. "If you're in love with him, why didn't you say yes to him right away?" I asked, feeling a lump in my throat. "Because when I first started a love relationship with you, I told you that as soon as I got engaged, our love relationship would end, and I would like to spend the last weekend with you. I want to take you to the resort this weekend to say goodbye properly." "Wow," I replied, completely stunned. "That would be great, but you don't have to do it," I said when she interrupted. "I will do it, and I have a lot of money. However, first I need to fully open up to you. So don't say yes yet," she said. Then Betsy turned on the bedside lamp and held her little finger right up to my face. The light from the lamp illuminated a plastic multicolored ring. My mind was in a mess when she said, "I'm Elizabeth Jenkins." Destino is an Italian word meaning destiny and a pseudonym that I use only for business. I've never been so speechless in my life. My emotions have taken over my mind and body. All I could do was stare at her with my mouth wide open. She realized that I couldn't speak, so she continued. I never got a chance to thank you properly for saving my life and my sister Jamie's life. I was shocked by what you did, not just by saving me, but by giving me a $200,000 trust fund. I had to find out about you. I noticed a tear in each of her eyes, and mine were wet too. When I was a teenager, I got a transcript of your testimony from your lawyer after I made him promise never to tell you. When I saw how my mother treated you, I was shocked and confused. Then I decided never, ever to be like her. Although she really loved and continues to love me and put everything she has into raising me and my sister, since then I have never been able to look at her the same way, Betsy Elizabeth continued. Then Betsy said in a slightly strangled voice, I decided to make it up to you for how badly you were treated. That's why I decided to use you 4 times, one for each of our family members. I discovered that you are a wonderful person and a lover, and I continued to do this both for my own pleasure and for the constant thank you. And I made sure that I would never confuse you in our long-term prospects. I finally spoke up. You're incredible, was all I could mumble through what were now full-fledged tears as I hugged her tightly. After a few seconds, Betsy pushed me away, wiped her tears, and then said, Does this mean that you will leave with me this weekend and let me pay out of the more than $300,000 that I still have left from the trust that you set up for me? You've given me the greatest gift anyone could give, I told her after I had regained some composure. You gave yourself so much that you turned my life around. There is no more hatred and anger in my heart, but only love and peace. It would be an honor for me to spend the last weekend with the most beautiful person in the world internally and externally. That Friday, Saturday, and Sunday morning were the bittersweet days of my life. Outwardly, I was not melancholic, despite the fact that I had to admit that I was in love with Betsy. It's because I was so happy for her and grateful to her. True to her word, Betsy never made love to me again after she accepted Eric's marriage proposal, although we remained very good friends. She even introduced me to my fiancée Grace, a widow 2 years younger than me, who was the executive director of the charity Betsy worked with. I didn't see the need to tell Grace anything about Janet, because now it was no longer a part of my life. Grace and I attended Betsy and Eric's wedding 9 months after Betsy accepted Eric's marriage proposal. Obviously, I knew that I would see Janet there, but since I no longer had hatred or anger in me, I had no fears. It was a wonderful ceremony and an amazing reception, and I was overwhelmed with joy for Betsy. At the reception, I could tell that Janet was avoiding me. I'm sure she was sure that I would bite her head off again if she tried to talk to me. However, shortly before Grace and I left, I found Janet. She was shocked when I approached her, as she had interrupted a conversation with one of her friends and was clearly preparing for trouble. Janet, I said, looking her straight in the eye and holding both her hands, I have to compliment you for raising the most wonderful woman in history. Elizabeth has no equal. I'm sure she could never have become the fantastic person she is without you as her loving mother. Good luck to you. With that, I turned around and walked towards Grace, leaving Janet completely speechless and gaping. When I approached Grace, she said, I think Betsy's mother wanted to tell you something. She was holding out her hand when you left, and I think I saw her lips say, I'm sorry. What would she regret? I don't know, honey, I replied to Grace, quickly leading her out of the ballroom. Maybe she thinks I didn't like the wedding cake? End.